I'm going.
First. Well, okay, so today, guys, as we've discussed, the aim is to increase your awareness and understanding of combustion and what might affect the combustion process. We are going to hopefully, and our objectives and outcomes will be determine the circumstances and incident that will change the dynamics of combustion. So there are things that are going to affect combustion, the combustion process, to make it better or worse. Explain the impact of ventilation on fire behaviour and fire gases within structures. So ventilation is a big part of what we're delivering over the next 2 days, and understanding ventilation better and how to deal with it. Outline the importance of understanding flow paths and their associated hazards. So through ventilation, whether it's meant or not, you will probably have a flow path of some sort. It's how to recognise that and deal with those situations and improve them, or as I say, tactically make a decision with them. And then lastly, identify considerations for wind-driven fire. So what would a wind-driven fire mean to you? Where are you encounter a wind-driven fire? High-rise in particular, yeah. So particularly in high-rise incidents, but let's be honest, I used to be on an aerial station, and really the 30-mile-an-hour wind warning that used to come over, we really advocated to the HP crew. But after these 2 days delivery, you may even the station without an aerial consider there might be an important piece of information if you've got high winds. Yeah. So there's a message from the LFB here just to prove that it's a thing that's been done in association with Babcock and the LFB together, that no one's made it up on their own. So the LFB has a clear aspiration of how we want our firefighting to look, and this course is the first step on the journey. Every year we are hoping to uplift your existing skills and knowledge with programs such as the initial 2-day course, and supported by station-based training. And I understand you're now receiving bigger download packages that you're dealing with and that kind of thing, so that's how they're going to progress out the station. The desired outcome is to equip you, our professional operational staff, with the skills and knowledge to select the appropriate firefighting tactics from your toolbox. The content covered in this course is designed to help you select the best tactics based on your desired outcomes. Also covered is how to evaluate those outcomes in order to confirm the best tactics were applied, and how to have the confidence to change those tactics in order to achieve the improved result. So kind of like I said a bit earlier, for me this course is very much about giving you the knowledge and the skills, but there's as much about your DRA and understanding what's going on and the tactics to apply as it is what you do with the branch in your hand, if you understand. So understanding and viewing what's going on is the most important thing. So, future equipment and tactics for the LFB. Okay, so these are some of the areas that the brigade are looking into, some of them more quickly than others obviously. So we've got smoke curtain. Anyone encountered smoke curtain before? Any idea what might be for? So, sorry, stop. Yeah, so stop protecting egress points, that would be a very good one, yeah. So if you had a point of egress you wanted to protect, making sure the smoke doesn't fill them areas up. So if you had a protected stairwell that become compromised, you might be able to stay that protected area with a smoke curtain. Any others?
I've been to a pub before on Captain's Ground, and
yeah.
The alarm went off, and the curtains come around the kitchen doors down into the cellar,
yeah.
actually protected where the alarm has gone off.
Yeah, brilliant. Okay, so this is actually a manually operated one, yeah, but there are automated systems as well. So it's about maintaining and reducing the ventilation, but also containing areas of smoke progression and movement to make sure we don't get protracted. Really good idea. So if I thought of probably the most apt point for that is obviously when we make entry into a lot of places now, because of the nature of how they're protected with security, quite often it's hard to get in without damaging the door. And as I'm going to sort of sell to you through these next 2 days, monitoring your door entry point is really quite important. So it's a means of maybe reinstating that, like if you lose the compromise of the front door, reinstating it so you can maintain the ventilation profile in place until you need to attack the fire later on. Does that make sense? Ultra high pressure lamps. FIU guys might have a little bit of an understanding of that. I know it's not on the run with the FIU, but I'm understanding the SOC team have this on the run at the moment, so it is used in the LFB. Basically, it's referred to quite commonly as Cobra. Have you heard that term used at all? Cobra is like a brand name, like we all call our vacuum cleaners Hoovers. Cobra make a particularly good method of high pressure lamps. But the idea is that you can put very fine water spray at high pressure into a compartment without actually necessarily making entry. There's an additive that's in the water that will force itself through the concrete, steel, and apply water into a compartment without having to make entry. Obviously, there's a fair amount of DRA that has to be done onto that. So I would imagine a lot of training before people be able to utilise that straight away. Misting branch. Anyone have any ideas on that? I'll see if there's anyone old enough in the room to quite remember the large applicators back in the day. Do you remember the large applicators?
There's one on the wall.
There's one on the wall, yeah. So that's kind of the same theory. It's just a means of applying a really large vapour spray, lots of water at very fine vapour for a really quick knockdown. It's very effective. They're looking into utilising that, particularly in areas like car fires, that kind of thing. Very effective knockdown because of how much vapour there is involved. PPV, as I say, this is the ground rules, kind of the area that we're looking into to upscale your knowledge so that this might be able to be applied in the future. Positive pressure ventilation via fitting of fans. Anyone any experience? Anyone done any retained stuff? Any knowledge of PPV at all? A little bit, yeah, a little bit. So basically there's three methods that can be utilised. We have no idea at the moment how the NFP can go forward with that, but most likely it'd be post-fire, so we are dealing with clearing smoke from areas so we can help with searching after putting the fire. Yeah. And lastly, as it says on the tin, floor below branch. So I don't know if you can quite make out that picture there, I'm not sure if it's on your sheet, it's not. A method of applying water in a particular way that will become more apparent as I deliver the rest of the delivery. From the floor below as a single core jet into the floor above, which is a particular method we're encouraging you to utilise at the moment. Obviously, you're going to need a spotter from somewhere else to assist with aiming in the direction because it pretty much is as it looks. It's a very big tube that directs all around the corner. So some of the tools I'm going to utilise this morning to help you understand fire better. A graph of a normal fuel developed fire or fuel control fire. Triangle fire, as you've seen many times, and a different kind of graph that I'll explain more in depth later on. Have you all seen those before? All of those? Yeah? You guys in particular? Seen them recently? So, using the triangle fire, in previous depictions of the triangle fire, the triangle was equilateral. Yeah, so we just drew an equilateral triangle in that shape. This will rarely, if ever, be the case in a real fire situation, as the fire conditions change. The length of each side of the triangle will change. So, really you're not going to see that in an operational compartment fire. Or if you do, it'll be a very specific point and then it will change again. It's continually changing the fire triangle during the process of combustion. So if I was to go back to this graph here, which is not really in a compartment, this is just a fully ventilated fuel control fire, where do you think you might see this? In the middle. Here somewhere? It's going to be where it's got everything it needs to be at its fullest potential. Yeah, so it's all the oxygen it needs, all the heat has been driven out of the fuel that's available. Yeah, so we've got a lovely fully developed fire, and that's the only place really you can see that kind of development. So heat and fuel. So part of this process, how we can fully understand how combustion works, is getting this link between heat and fuel. Heat and fuel are interlinked. Yeah, so what that means is that one begets the other. Yeah, so heat, if you have heat in a compartment, it will release fuel from the fuel loading. So this is fuel loading, not fuel. Okay, this is the item that's carrying the fuel in it. But what's the fuel?
Flammable gases.
Flammable gases that are released. Yeah, does anyone remember the terminology for that? Pyrolysis. Yeah, so when we have pyrolysis, we're giving off the gases, they're all igniting, that's the fuel. Yeah. So we need heat to release the fuel. But once we get the fuel, obviously we can have more combustion as long as we have oxygen, so then we'll get more heat. And that's how the two are interlinked. Yeah? So the process is just ongoing, each begetting the other. Applied heat will cause the pyrolysis of material to create gaseous fuel, and the fuel is then heated enough to react, causing combustion with surrounding oxygen, creating further heat. Some of that heat will be drawn away by the passives. Remember that term from before, passives? Any throwing a quick description of what passive is in the room? Yeah, partly right. The walls, yeah, the walls would be. Yeah? Anyone? No? Okay, so passives. Within this compartment, at the moment everything's a passive. We haven't got fire in it, we haven't got combustion in the compartment, so everything's acting passively, yeah? Once you start the combustion process in this compartment, things will remain passive for a while and then react in one of two ways. So what will happen, the compartment will heat up. As long as there's enough heat being generated by the fire, it will slowly overcome the passives in the compartment. And that's why, if you go back to this area, there's slow development of the start. It's overcoming the passives. Yeah? That makes sense? Yeah, all agree with that? Okay. Then what happens is as the heat generates and we get this interlinked fuel getting more heat and heat getting more fuel, as it builds up, the passives are overcome, and then one or two things will happen. We will either get pyrolysis of items in that compartment that were previously passive, and they're now acting as part of the combustion process because they're beginning to release fuel into the compartment. So that's one way they can react. So that's when they're not necessarily acting so passively. Or like the walls, particularly if they're made of concrete and stuff like that, and won't break down very easily, it'll reach a point that they can't take any more heat. Yeah, because it always goes to cold. So once there's balance within the room, once the heat of the compartment is the same as what the heat of the walls are, it won't take any more heat. Some people say it reflects back into the compartment. That's kind of right. What it means is that because no more heat can go into the walls, there's more heat energy available within the compartment to compress the fire quicker away. Does that make sense? Some of that heat will be drawn away by the passives. If the heat drawn by the passives is less than the heat being produced, then the cycle will accelerate, provided there is sufficient oxygen. And that's the key point we're trying to get across here all the time. As long as we've got sufficient oxygen, then that process will go on and on and on and on until what point? Fuel runs out. Yeah, once the fuel runs out, then we can't have a fire anymore, can we? It will die down, natural decay, and go out. But as long as there's sufficient oxygen, that fire will go on and on until you interfere with that process. Yeah? So, as a little analogy for you, and just to show you that you have a wide expanse of information, knowledge about this subject, I'm going to take this match as an example. Get myself an example match. If you was to say this was one of those large kitchen matches, it's a bit big and my fingers are quite big but not quite enough to cover it. If I was to light this in this compartment now, and I've got flames started by the phosphorus or whatever it is that's on the end, and it begins to burn, what happens? What would naturally happen? Would it keep burning or would it go out? Do you think it would keep burning? Is it encountering any passives at this time, initially when it's lighting? The matchsticks are passive, yeah? So initially it is fighting against itself. The fuel loading is the matchstick. So that has to go through a process of pyrolysis to release the fuel to continue the match burning. What else might be acting as a passive at that time?
Everything else around it, where it's been lit.
So what's around it at the moment?
Yeah.
The air and the moisture within the compartment will have an effect on how fast the compartment progresses through the fire. When I used to deliver the compartment, anyone go to Gatwick back in the day and do the attack runs down there? On a hot day, we used to have a real issue with trying to maintain the compartment so it didn't go towards flashover. Because just at the heat on the top of the compartment, and once the compartment got hot on the inside, the passives had gone, the fire just wanted to run away all the time. When we used to come down winter, we never had that problem, just because the moisture in the air and the cold air on the outside of the compartment were maintaining a certain amount of passive resistance within that compartment, so it didn't happen so much. So even the air itself is a form of passive for a while. Okay, yeah, happy with that? So, continues to burn until what point?
Fuel runs out.
Fuel runs out. Why does the fuel run out? You haven't restricted it, yeah? So you're right in what you're saying. If fuel runs out, if I let go of the match, it would run out at the end, but at this point, I'm restricting the flow of the supply of the fuel with my fingers, aren't I? Yeah, so I've stopped the fuel. What else have I stopped? Fuel's match was a bit smaller.
Polarisation.
Yeah, the polarisation. Why have I stopped the polarisation? What point?
Smothered it, haven't you?
Stopping
Fuel.
So I smothered the fuel,
Stopping the heat degrading the matchstick because it can't.
and what's doing that? What is the passive that I'm applying?
Your fingers.
My fingers, exactly, yeah? My fingers, I might singe a little bit and it probably hurt a little bit, but the fire will go out because of the nature of the heat in the flame, although it's quite hot, it burns somewhere around 600 to 800 degrees, a match flame. The quantity of heat within that flame, because it's so small, is not a lot, so the fact my passive resistance of my fingers will put that fire out before it actually starts to degrade my fingers and they start to melt. Yeah? So the passive resistance is part of the reason that flames go out. What's the last one? What else am I restricting? We've done the fuel. And we've done the air. Yeah, I'm completely restricting the air that's allowed to get to the matchstick. So it's going to go out. So I'm actually attacking all three sides of the fire triangle by holding the match like that when it gets to my fingers. So to understand passive and the effects that has on the flame, if I was to light that same match now, this was a cold concrete floor, put it onto the floor, what would you expect to happen? It'd go out, wouldn't it? Yeah, in most cases, or if you told me, if you remember the old glass ashtrays back in the pubs back in the day, but for the same reason glasses are quite good passive. The match always used to go out within a very small time of putting it in there. Because of the passive draw of the cold surface, concrete's a really good passive. We haven't really restricted the oxygen to that flame, have we? We've still got three sides of the matchstick to burn, and the fuel is all there for it to utilise. But just because the passive draw is more than the flame energy being produced, the flame will go out. Yeah? So that's all in a nutshell what the passive's about. This leads nicely on to, if I can just find the clicker. Yeah. That's the system. Okay, so when sufficient heat energy is applied to a gaseous fuel, it will chemically react with the available oxygen. When there is no restriction on the supply of oxygen, the fire growth and development will be dependent on the available fuel and thermal dynamics of the surroundings, and that's a fuel control fire. So if you have full ventilation to a fire, loads and loads of oxygen available, it will go through its natural progression all the way through, run out of fuel and start to decay at the end. And as you can see, you've got a graph on a piece of paper there. In a compartment of limited oxygen, okay, so people sometimes say no or limited oxygen. It's very unlikely operationally you can ever come across a compartment with no oxygen in it or no ventilation. It just doesn't happen unless you actually go to a university or somewhere and they've got proper vacuum sealed compartments. It's never going to happen. In a compartment of limited oxygen, as long as there is enough heat and energy to sustain combustion and sufficient fuel, then the combustion process is likely to reach a point where it will deplete the oxygen to such a level that it will be disrupted and its ventilation controlled. So, as a guess, what percentage do you think you need or to get down to of oxygen within the compartment before the flame will go out? I don't know, just guess.
5%.
5%, a little bit higher.
10.
So it's 15%. Yeah, so it's quite a lot. In effect, you think 15%, it's not almost zero, is it? So there's still quite a lot of oxygen within the compartment. The flame will go out because it needs more than that amount of oxygen to sustain the combustion process. You might get some burning embers, and that's where you get situations like backdraft being dangerous, still an ignition source, but you won't have a flame anything under than 15%. Why might that be important? Not necessarily, but why might that be important? Go back to your IAC training. When you were doing IAC training, how much air do we need for
So if
survivability?
you've got petrol in there, there's still going to be a lot of there's a flame in it.
There's a possibility, yeah. So even though the flames might have gone out, obviously there's the heat to deal with, so we've got to take that into consideration. And there's going to be a lot of other toxic materials in there if it's quite just had foam in it and all that kind of thing. There'll be a lot of pointless materials, but actually the oxygen level. There's still enough in the room to sustain life at that point, even though the flame's extinguished. Because remember, when you do your CPR and you're breathing back, you breathe out 15% when you do it. It starts at 21, and you can still keep someone alive by breathing out 15% from yourself into them. Yeah, do you remember that? So, passives. All of the surrounding materials that are not as hot as the chemical reaction will act as passives and will draw heat energy, and they call that endothermic for those that are interested. Heat energy always flows from hot to cold. I really like to emphasise this point. Why is that so important? Let's go layman's terms. Let's think about you guys in the room. Why is that important?
We're cold when we go.
You're cold in there.
The coldest thing going into a fire compartment 99% of the time would be you. Yeah? So the heat is always drawn to the coldest object in the room the most. And the bigger the disparity between the two, the higher the temperature compared to you, the faster the rate of transfer. Yeah? So the more heat there is in the compartment, the quicker it will go towards you. The only thing that might possibly be covered and use the water inside the hose you're carrying, hopefully. Yeah, but really, that kind of understanding is a big part of what we're talking about with your DRA. When you go into a fire compartment, some of the heat's going to go into the walls, but the majority of it is instantly going to go to the coldest thing that's in the compartment at that time. If this energy draw is sufficiently high and the heat energy low enough, then pyrolysis will decrease to such a level that combustion cannot be sustained. So we said at some point, if the passive draw is too much, if the oxygen is not available, there will come a point below that 15% where the fire goes out. So what's the effect of introducing water? What do we do in essence? What's the main function? What are we doing? Thinking about what we've discussed already. What's the main thing we're doing? We're cooling, we're definitely cooling. But how are we cooling? We're taking the energy. What we're actually doing when we apply water, or when you guys apply water, you're re-establishing the passives within the compartment. So the passives that have been overcome by the heat energy and the combustion process, you're actually putting that back in with your water. Yeah, and that's why sometimes just applying it to a boundary or near to the scene of a fire can still have quite a cooling process and still interfere with the combustion process a lot, gas cooling even, if you're taking that into account, as applying it to the scene of the fire, because what you're doing is putting passives back out. It's something that the combustion process has got to deal with in the compartment. So if we introduce water into the fire compartment, then we introduce passives. The passives will draw energy away from the fire and will start to smother it, reducing pyrolysis and the rate of combustion. So obviously, what's that kind of saying? The more water we put into a compartment, the quicker we put the fire out. Yeah, it's kind of saying that the more passives are in the compartment, suddenly it's becoming, everyone's saying, oh, I've heard that before. Put lots of water on the fire, it goes out. Well, that's what we're kind of saying, okay? Fair amount of DRA goes along with that, but yeah, we've been doing it right all these years. Put enough water on the hot wobbly stuff and it will go out, yeah? The energy draw from the water will be more than the energy produced from the fire, and if this process continues, the combustion will cease. The fire produces energy, so if the water we apply has a great energy draw than the fire producing, it will go out. Now, this is part of the process, I think, that we're trying to re-establish, and I know some of you have never forgotten it, but perhaps for those who've come into your job in the last 10 years, maybe gas cooling has become a little bit of a preoccupation, if you see what I mean, and not fully understood that there's other options. And that's what we're trying to say is, yes, gas cooling, I'm still a big, huge advocate of gas cooling. I believe it's a fantastic process, but it has a right time and the right place. And sometimes just applying water directly to the seat of the fire is a better option. If you don't need to go into that compartment to try and get to another area, or to control conditions, or to make a rescue, then sometimes just applying a lot of water to the seat of the fire, if putting the fire out is what you want to do, it's going to be the best option. Do we all agree with that?
I don't think that was the problem with the last one, so it just got you ready to think you've got to do that every time.
Yeah, I think, as a sort of having to defend it, having delivered that course at the time, because it's the hardest skill to teach. You do that through all of your lives, don't you? You tend to focus the hardest part of your skill, probably the hardest thing we have to teach you as to be 18 is gas cooling. It's quite a hard technique, and the whole idea process behind how to do it properly is very difficult. So what you tend to do is over-focus on what's the hardest thing to deliver, or maybe under-focus on actually there's another option we can do if this isn't working, and try this, So what, people have thought about it, and perhaps they're thinking to themselves, perhaps we can do with re-establishing some of them other techniques as well, and give people an option and an idea of what else they might need to do in those scenarios, particularly those that have come through, as I say, recently and have had even more emphasis put on gas cooling, and don't remember the days before it even came along, which was around about 2009, I think, big advent of gas cooling, if I remember rightly, around about then. So, triangle of fire, scenario, ventilation control fire. So this is the other graph you've got on your paper, guys. This is a ventilation control fire. Those of you remember we used to have a graph of backdraft as well. You notice they're quite similar. Yeah, it could be the potential for a backdraft. What do you think's going on? I'll describe it to you. So we've got our natural development of the fire here. And the slow rate of progress is because the passives are in the compartment. Yeah, so there's a passives within the compartment. We get a steady rate of heat as more fuel is released. It starts to grow and then reaches a peak point where that's our oxygen. So we're talking about a poorly or very limited ventilated compartment. So the natural oxygen that's in here gets the fire going, it starts to progress, heads towards flashover. It may get there, it may not quite get there, and then dies. Yeah, it starts to dip because it runs out of oxygen that it needs to support that process. And we call that false decay. So at the end, the only other time you get a dip like that is here, that's natural decay. If you get it this time in the process, that's a false decay. Can give a lot of the same signs and symptoms as a fire that's gone into full decay. And that's why we like to emphasise it, because you need to read that DRA properly to recognise those signs and symptoms, to know that it's actually not safe to go in because it's a false decay and not naturally a naturally occurring decay. So then it drops down, and then something changes. What could be the change? Window failed, door opening, change of wind direction. It could be, yeah, if it's, you know, if we were talking about limited ventilation, yeah, it could be a change of wind direction. Anything that seems to then encourage more oxygen into that compartment may bring around this change. We're going to focus on kind of the scenarios where it's been most, well, it's happened most, if you like, operationally. So it tends to be a window failing or the door opening procedure maybe not carried out quite as well as it could have been. So a big introduction of oxygen into the compartment. We get this sudden and fast rise in development of the combustion process towards full development again. So why is it such a quick rate? Why is it not going up like this? Why is that raised so? You've already got heat. The heat is already in the compartment, yeah? So the passive's already been overcome. What else have we got in the compartment? Fuel. There's still fuel in the compartment. There's still loads of gaseous fuel. All that time that heat was going down, that was decaying, there was still pyrolysis going in. So there's still fuel coming out. So we had a lovely rich environment for fuel, and all it's missing is the oxygen side. And the way I tend to describe this, if you think I might come along in my old pickup truck, which isn't the quickest out of set lights, and someone might be suddenly in their Ferrari F40. But if I was to approach the lots of 50 and manage to catch them as they change, I'm still going to win the race over the first 30 yards because I've got a rolling start. Yeah, it doesn't matter what energy the Ferrari's got, it's not going to catch me up till later on. This is that case, that's the rolling start. Yeah, you haven't got to take everything from the start. We're not on a static start, we've got a rolling start. We've got everything in place that we need to go fast. We just need to have the oxygen. Yeah? Good. So if we consider a fire within the compartment that is unvented, it's just started, then initially the oxygen side could be as long as the availability of oxygen is good. The heat side could be short, as the surrounding passives will be drawing a lot of heat energy away from the combustion process, which we've discussed. And the fuel side could also be short due to the limited heat available for the pyrolysis to occur. So that's what our fire triangle looks like initially. Yeah, there's loads of options about the compartment, limited heat and limited fuel. Yeah, because the fuel's not being released because we've got no heat, it's causing the pyrolysis. If there is sufficient heat available to sustain combustion, so if the fuel is available and the heat is available, then it starts to progress, it starts to overcome them passives, and we're going to head on to this next stage. Then the passives will start to heat up, taking less of the fire's energy and leaving more heat and energy available to support pyrolysis and then combustion. So basically combustion as a process is self-propagating. Yeah? It produces enough energy within the process to allow for more combustion. Yeah? As long as you overcome them passives that aren't drawing that energy away, it will progress. As the combustion rate increases, the heat side will rise and the fuel side will be fairly lean, but will stabilise as will the oxygen. So what will basically happen, as the fuel is released, the heat side will go up. Yeah? As the rate of combustion increases, the heat side will grow, but when the level of available oxygen is restricted, the combustion rate will slow and level out, influenced by the oxygen present. Pyrolysis will still be occurring, but due to reduction in the chemical reactions with oxygen, more and more unburnt fuel will be available as the fire becomes fuel rich. We all remember that term, fuel rich? Do you understand what fuel rich is? Yeah, and fuel lean. Remember carburettors?
Uppermost limit low.
Sorry?
Uppermost limit and low.
That's it, uppermost, yeah. So we go back to limits of flammability. So anything that was underneath the lower point of flammability was too lean. And anything where there was too much fuel and beyond the upper limit is too rich to sustain. No matter how much fuel is in that compartment, you could have 100% the settling in this compartment, and it wouldn't combust because it's got outside this range of flammability. Therefore, the oxygen side will be short and the fuel side long, and the heat side will slowly decrease. As the rate of combustion increases, the heat side will grow, but the level of availability of oxygen is restricted. The combustion rate will slow and level out, influenced by the oxygen present. Pyrolysis will still be occurring, but due to a reduction in chemical reactions with oxygen, more and more unburnt fuel will be available as the fire becomes fuel rich. So that's exactly as we discussed, yeah? So as the oxygen dies out, slowly the process dies down. What happens, the pyrolysis is still going on because there's a bit of heat, so we're still getting fuel, but we're not getting as much combustion. Bear with me, guys. See a few eyes going. There's a lot of information here. In a couple of seconds, I've got a little bit more to go through. Another guy's going to come on doing the video, and somebody say, well, I didn't play the video first one here, so boring in comparison. Yeah. Okay, but we have to get through this stuff, so if you bear with me. Okay, so scenario, ventilation control fire still. If the compartment then becomes ventilated via a window failure or door opening, due to the inrush of cooler air and incident of hot gases. So do I understand, when you open the compartment, there's a release of pressure. The compartment's pressurised, yeah? And that's a big part of what we're going on to later about flow paths. You instantly can create a kind of exit and entry point at the doorway when you're opening it. As a fuel-rich environment becomes leaner, but the oxygen will increase. During this period, a temporary slowing of the combustion process may occur as the cold air, the passage is taken away from the fire. So that was one of the ones for me as a 30-year firefighter to get my head around, that when I let air into a compartment, initially the combustion process, if it was going, well, the compartment will get cooler. Do you agree with that? Does that kind of ring true or not true? Do you think there will be a cooling effect on the fire? By opening up to the cold air outside?
Momentarily, until the oxygen is then mixed with fuel and you're creating heat again.
It absolutely does happen, and you'll see in a few of the videos, when the doors are first opened, you initially see a little bit of a drop in the combustion within the process inside the compartment, but exactly as Casey said, it's going to be limited. It's not going to do you a lot of good unless you immediately follow it up with application of water, okay? So hanging around for a long time, the door open into a non-ventilated compartment isn't going to do you a lot of good, although it might cool the compartment down for a while, unless you apply some water, or even into a compartment that's alive. If the compartment then became ventilated via a window failure or door opening, due to the inrush of cooler air and incident of hot gases and the overpressure, the heat side of the triangle may be reduced. So as we say, a little bit of a passive element of the air coming in, we'll reduce that, and the reduction in the fuel side can also be expected. As the fuel-rich environment becomes leaner, but the oxygen side will increase. During this period, a temporary slowing in the combustion process may occur and take energy away from the fire, but it will be limited. As the fire recovers and the combustion process rate increases, the heat side will grow, the fuel side becomes stable, providing there's sufficient fuel loaded to facilitate gaseous fuel production, and the oxygen side will also become stable and will head back to a kind of equilateral triangle, yeah, the area where our fire wants to be. If you like that element within the limits of flammability, if you remember the ideal mix, it's got everything it needs to progress. So, as I promised, everyone okay? Does anyone need to get a warm drink or anything? We're happy to go straight to the video. What about lighting, guys? Are you happy with the light as it is? Maybe that one? A little more ambience. Yeah. Right, okay. Hopefully, if my IT skills are up to scratch.